Right. So Fiona, please tell us, for everyone watching and listening, let us know who you are, where you are, what you do, and roughly when you were at Cambridge.
Okay. Yeah, so my name's Fiona Marshall, and I'm calling here from the other Cambridge, Cambridge, Massachusetts. And yes, I've been here now in my current role just over a year. My current role is leading, so I have the title of President of Biomedical Research, that is for Novartis. So Novartis is one of the largest pharmaceutical companies, headquartered in Switzerland. And biomedical research includes all of the early discovery work, drug discovery, drug development, disease biology, research, through translational medicine, so taking molecules through to roundabout phase 2, where I then hand over to the head of late stage development and cover many different disease areas within that context. I'm leading research teams really around the globe, mostly in the United States as well as in Switzerland.
Wow. Okay. And tell us, when were you at Cambridge? What were you studying?
So I was at Cambridge for my PhD. I did my first undergraduate degree in biochemistry at Bath University, and then I came to Cambridge for my PhD, and that was in the end of the 1980s.
Okie doke.
1990s. So
Great
yes.
era.
Yes, exactly. So actually returned to Cambridge later on. I then went and worked in what was Glaxo as my first job, which became Glaxo Wellcome. Then it became GSK, which is what it is now. But in just 2003, I came back to Cambridge as a visiting lecturer in the pharmacology department, actually, and put together a drug discovery lecture course, as well as working with the Judge Institute to put together a course called Masters in Bioscience Enterprise.
Oh.
So I sort of had two periods of my career, if you like, around the pharmacology department.
Wow. Okay, great. Thank you for that. And, and we're grateful for your time today. And so we obviously reached out because we wanted to do a bit of a spotlight on you, your time since Cambridge, your time at Cambridge, some of your fond memories, sharing this with the alumni as well. So really appreciate you sparing the time. So we're going to go on to maybe during your two stints at Cambridge, and maybe you can pick out one, maybe in the late 80s, probably fond memories of Wham, hopefully. What were some of your highlights while you were studying here?
Well, Cambridge, I mean, I love Cambridge. And I think it's really about the diversity of the people that you meet in Cambridge. People from all over the world, but also people doing so many different subjects. Every possible area of study you could imagine. And in fact, I lived as a graduate with an Egyptologist and an archaeologist together. Shared a house with them, and so the sort of discussions that you could have over dinner or in the graduate society middle common room, for me that was one of the highlights, just the whole environment of being in Cambridge and the people that you meet. And I really threw myself into college life. I mean, this is another thing which I think is wonderful about Cambridge. You have both the department that you're working in, the topic, the science, in my case, that's studying, but then you also have the college that you're a member of and, part of that community. So you have two different sort of communities that you're part of, and that really enriches life in Cambridge. And so I really fully threw myself into it and actually but it was the first time I became president, because I became president of the Graduate Society, or the Middle Common Room for Jesus College. And so got a lot involved in the running of the colleges, and all of the wonderful things that brought together. And I think that did help my sort of management skills, if you like. And there was numerous situations where students had behaved badly that I had to represent the students at the college committees on how we should deal with these types of things. So it was a good early introduction to managing people, shall we say. So
and presidency.
Yes, and being a president, exactly. So that was one thing, I think, but also then the quality of the science was why I went there in the first place.
Okay.
And that again, I was located, actually, my PhD was a Case Award, which is something that the UK really excels at, already bringing together industry with academia. And these Case PhDs are an industry sponsored PhD. So
Okay.
I had a supervisor who was actually in a pharmaceutical company called Park Davis,
Right.
as well as having the connection through to the pharmacology department. So really early on got that idea of, industry and how
Yes.
industry can collaborate with academia, and I was on the Addenbrooke's campus, which is another fantastic, amazing community in itself, and has even more so flourished since then. And just that environment on Addenbrooke's and all the different people that are there, again, just a fantastic centre of healthcare excellence.
I think it's quite a unique ecosystem, isn't it? And probably one
Yeah.
I'm guessing you don't really, I'm guessing maybe appreciate until you get into it and you appreciate all the different aspects of what you can get involved in.
That's right. And since I was first there, I mean, it's really flourished, become a world center, I think, actually, for biotech,
You're right.
startups. And I later on, I was privileged to be the founder of a company that spun out of the LMB, the Laboratory of Molecular Biology in Cambridge.
Yeah.
And again, one of the world leading laboratories with DNA and many Nobel Prizes, from structural biology being a real area of excellence for the LMB. So that's really what led me to be able to set that spin out.
And tell me, like, come to Cambridge, do you imagine you're going to spin out a business?
I think you could do, yes. I mean, not when I was doing my PhD, maybe not, no.
Okay.
But I think a lot of people now, I mean, interesting, when I was the Bioscience Enterprise course, which I helped to start, a lot of students who join that is about exactly that. How can you turn bioscience into a commercial endeavor, an
Yeah.
enterprise? And it's an interesting course that brings together the science with also the business side of things, and how do you write a business plan and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So it does have that very good, sort of ability. But I think that's one of the nice things about going into science as a degree, that it opens up a whole world that maybe you don't realize when you're at school, what you can actually do with a science degree and the different career paths it can lead you into.
Yeah. So then rewind a little bit just on that. So what is it about the science subjects that got you going?
Oh, I mean, I was always, even as a small child, I was born a scientist. I think I love understanding how things work,
Okay.
sort of from the basic fundamental nature. So even as a scientist, I've gone, from studying physiology to getting more, cell biology, molecular, atomic level, going down into the smallest possible detail of understanding how things work. So that's one of the things I love. And then the idea that you can actually discover new things as well, as a scientist, that nobody knew about. And I've had fortunate times in my career where I've made a discovery like that, where I thought, wow, only I know this. I mean, that's amazing when you have that. But also then how you can then use those discoveries and learnings to then invent something new. In my case, try and invent a new drug. So that for me is something that always I found amazingly exciting, and I have continued to do really through my whole career.
Amazing. And so go back then, you're kind of like starting to get excited about science. What was your career path? What were you thinking? What was ahead
Yeah,
of
so
you?
even as a child, as I say, even at school, I loved all the sciences more than anything else, and I
Yeah.
was really focused on those. Chose all the sciences to do for my A levels at school.
Okay.
But then that naturally, that encourages your parents and your teachers to think you must do medicine. I mean, there's like a sort of bit of a narrow focus that if you're good at science equals medicine. And so I sort of was drifting in that direction, but I think I just didn't. I knew that was something not quite right for me as a career. Even though I'd sort of filled out the application forms to go to medical school, I sort of pulled out at the last minute and
Did
thought,
you?
no, actually, I want to discover new medicines, not treat existing diseases with existing medicines. So
Yeah.
I literally, within a very short space of time, thought, okay, what do I actually want to do? And that's what led me to biochemistry, because I thought that's like the best place to start in understanding, the fundamentals of cell chemistry, and then that could help you understand disease. So switched to doing biochemistry at Bath, but also I also had a very clear view that I wanted to apply learning, not be an academic.
Right. That was always in your mind. You didn't want to go to
do good, very high quality science, but I also wanted to apply it. So I chose the degree at Bath because it did have what's called a sandwich course, where you had built-in internships in the degree course, and I picked two different places where I went into industry, one in biotech and one as part of my degree course. Really understand working in that sort of environment. So that again was something quite early on.
Yeah.
So then it was quite an easy career path. So that I, did my degree, did my PhD, sponsored with industry, went straight directly into industry.
Yeah.
But I always wanted to still do research in industry. I didn't want to have a, management job, which is essentially what I have now, but I wanted to stay close to doing the science, not go into more of the business side. And so I have always tried to stay as close to the science as I possibly can, and publish high quality papers, and to always collaborate with academia as much as I can as well.
That must be a challenge.
How did you then go to start in the spin-up?
Yeah, so after I left GlaxoSmithKline, went to a smaller biotech company called Millennium, and I was actually juggling home and family life. I had young children then, and it did become difficult to juggle. So this is at the point where I thought, well, actually, no, I'm going to step off the crazy corporate ladder. And this is when I came back to Cambridge. I actually contacted, it was Alan Cuthbertson or whoever was the head of pharmacology at the time, and said, oh, you don't need to pay me, but could I please come and, sort of hang around at the department and, maybe do some lectures, and maybe people be interested in the drug discovery components. But as soon as I did that, I then started getting contacted by biotech companies and venture capital people in Cambridge to say, oh, we hear you're in Cambridge and you've got some spare time. Maybe you'd like to come and talk to our company and be an advisor. So I ended up having an amazing opportunity to have being on scientific advisory boards or working as an advisor this was the sort of start of biotech in Cambridge around about the millennium 2000, the start of the genomic era with human genome sequencing coming out. So I ended up working with about 30 different companies in the Cambridge environment, and I hadn't really planned to do this for very long, but I ended up doing it for 5 years, staying based in pharmacology, but also then set up my own consultancy business. And that then led me, eventually the children got older, so they didn't really need me to sort of have that flexibility. And I thought, no, now I've learned enough to potentially set up a company myself. So I got invited by one of the venture capital investors to say, can you go to the LMB to look at some new technology to solve membrane protein structures? And this was Chris Tate and Richard Henderson. And so I went along, saw the technology, thought it had great potential. And so Chris and Richard didn't want to set the company up themselves. They were very happy staying at the LMB. So I said, I'll join as a chief scientific officer and help be a founder of the company.
Okay. And then from there?
Yeah, so we raised the money. Malcolm Weir came in as the CEO because, as I say, I don't like doing the business stuff so much. I just wanted to focus on the science. So Malcolm, together we raised the money, set the company up, and we were down in Mill Hill, actually, in the old NIMR porter cabins. It was quite basic. But when people came and started, we actually sent them up to Cambridge to work with Chris and Richard in their labs to get the training of the technology. And that technology worked out amazingly well, much better than we hoped even. So we were able to solve a lot of membrane protein structures and then use that for structure-based drug design. And many drugs have gone into the clinic from that technology, still going through development, and were partnered with other pharmaceutical companies. And interestingly, Novartis was one of the early seed investors in what was called in the company Heptares. And so I got to know Novartis quite well through that. So it's amazing how you make these different connections over the years, and one thing can lead to another.
Would you say that's kind of like how your career has gone? One thing leads to another?
Totally, it has. I've been very fortunate, really, that actually I haven't really, I wouldn't say I've sort of looked for a job or applied for it. I always try and concentrate on what I'm doing at the time. Then opportunities happen to come along, and like when I came to do lecturing, I just planned on doing some lecturing and making myself useful, and then just got contacted. Oh, Fiona, would you like to do this? Would you like to do that?
Wow. Very good. And so then you fast forward to today then, Fiona, and what kind of challenges are you working on? What's going on in your industry, in your sector?
Well,
I think your desk?
Drug discovery is at a really interesting point at the moment. And this is important for pharmacology, actually, because pharmacology and drug discovery used to be very focused on low molecular weight chemical compounds and screening chemical libraries. And, most drugs were oral drugs. But now, of course, we've got so many different types of drugs. So biologic antibodies, but cell therapy, gene therapy, siRNA, so that the types of drugs are very, very different. And this gives huge potential to really change how we treat disease. But it's very interesting from, the principles of pharmacology that you learn are so important about understanding the dose, how you get to the right dose for a particular target, what level of target engagement. So do you need it? If you're going to block a target, do you have to block it by 90% or is 50% good enough? What's the durability of the treatment? All of these that we have very rigorous training in pharmacology now becomes more difficult, but actually very interesting in how you apply that to how do you do a dose response with cell therapy or something that's actually growing inside your body. How do you do a dose response to that? So these are or drugs that sometimes last very long inside a cell, even though they may have been cleared completely from the body, which is what happens with siRNA. So I think huge opportunities in our industry to change how we think about diseases, how we can treat diseases. What we're trying to do is much more, rather than treat symptoms, really understand the underlying causes of disease. And we can do that through many different approaches, driven by human genetics, for example, or clinical data, but then really try and address those underlying causes. So you're really changing the disease outcome rather than just keep treating the symptoms.
Yes, that makes sense. And then so crystal ball for us a little bit. Where are we going to be next 10 years? What do you see?
Well, I think we'll see more and more of these types of approaches coming through as drugs, hoping that more diseases will become, ideally cured, but I think put into long-term remission, so that you can I like to think of it that we want our patients to forget they're sick, forget they even have a disease. So maybe they need to take an injection once a year, but otherwise they're absolutely fine to get on with their lives. Use medicine to give people their lives back, so that they can go on and be productive and all of the good things that are possible. So that's the future. One of the exciting new areas which is sort of hot at the moment is the application of AI and computational methods in everything that we're doing. And that interesting, how is that going to impact everything, how we work, how we go about our work, how we can learn more about human biology, how we discover drugs. We're trying to incorporate how AI can help us in all of these things.
It's Graham, you're nodding at that, aren't you? Because I think you've been doing a lot of work within AI in your research.
Yeah, we were just lucky enough to get a grant on AI in drug discovery in a slightly different way to what you probably think about screening compounds and things, but it's looking at alternate proteins and how they might regulate things and trying to deep mine that.
So very interesting.
Yeah, I think AI is the way forward. I'm just not sure we fully understand it yet.
No, I know. And even Microsoft don't fully understand it. I work with them. So I think I like to think of it a bit like we don't really understand our car engines anymore now in the way that we used to, but we can still drive them perfectly well. So I think that's the thing. What's the potential for AI? How can you best use it? And I do think all the proteins are very amenable to AI applications. So.
Yeah, and given all the databases that we have now,
yes,
folded stuff, and obviously some of the structures that you guys produced all those years,
yeah,
it really helps us along.
Very exciting area, definitely.
We kind of need to try and manipulate the computer science with the science.
Yes,
with industry.
So I think this is really important. You know, when I give career talks, I really say to people that you have to be a data scientist now, and you have to have, you know, incorporate, you know, computational methods into what you're doing right from the outset, because that's the language that we're going to be speaking now and even more so in the future. And it really can make people more productive and do things, I think, that weren't possible before, or certainly speed things up.
Yeah, I think with Graham, we're seeing that a lot in the School of Biological Sciences, aren't we? Like computational biology and bioinformatics.
Well, I've always thought pharmacology is a discipline which is rooted in mathematics and that kind of thing anyway. So it's a natural situation for AI to be really, really working well in that. In fact, today I was over at your old cohort in GSK talking to David Hall about that kind of thing as well.
Very good. Well, okay, do say hello to David. No, you're absolutely right. I mean, it's actually my pharmacologists that I find are some of the people who most quickly are embracing AI and modeling, and it has real applications for, again, you know, predicting PK/PD relationship. Predictive toxicology is another area where I'm very interested in AI applications. So yeah, I think it really does tie in very well with pharmacology.
Yeah, excellent. Fiona, different tack then. So you're gallivanting all over the world, and I guess sometimes you might have time on your hands. What you're reading, what you're watching, and what would you recommend for folk?
Yeah, so I actually think some of the things that makes it actually easier to learn about the world around now is social media. I mean, if you actually follow the right people on X or Twitter, follow the key journals and the leaders in fields, if you're interested in a field, go and look at who are the people that sort of are good on social media and follow them. You can learn a lot very quickly. I mean, it's amazing how fast sort of comments come out on breaking publications, for example, and then you can go and find the original paper and still read it. So you can't just do the social media, but that's a gateway into, you know, how do you get into a field? How do you keep watch across new developments in fields? I find it, because I have to cover so much broad science, I actually find, you know, doing that as a very useful thing. And you know, I enjoy things like TED Talks, again, by sort of leaders in the field to sort of give you a big picture. Things like AI. I mean, there's some fantastic TED Talks on how AI is going to impact healthcare, for example. But you know, I still really do encourage people to go and properly read the literature as well. And there's, again, very good review articles now. You know, these different modalities of drugs that I've talked about. So, you know, siRNA and gene therapy, gene editing. Of course, CRISPR is a new exciting area of development. So I think, again, staying ahead of these fields by reading, you know, the latest reviews in things like, you know, Nature Reviews Drug Discovery, for example. But these are always, you know, the more broadly you can read as a scientist, then I think, the more fun it is to be a scientist, actually.
Yeah. Because again, I guess if you then circle back to your time at Cambridge, we didn't have AI, we didn't have social media, we didn't have the internet too much.
Well, amazingly, actually, when I tell my kids, we went to the library, we photocopied things, but we also browsed through the journals to see what else was happening. And it's, in a way, it's a bit like that. And yeah, of course, you know, I think, you know, we have to go deep, but I'm hoping AI can help us to do that. But so I think as you develop your career, staying curious and interested in other fields is so important, because often I find that, you know, multidisciplinary groups or groups that come together from different areas can really, it's where you get real innovation, is where you bring different disciplines together.
Absolutely. That's a really good point. Fiona, you mentioned briefly that you do careers talks, and tell me about your circuit. Where are we going to see you next? What kind of events or conferences are you speaking at?
I do get invited. I've been kindly invited to Dundee, actually, to go and give a sort of career. Usually people want me to do what's the sort of state of the art in the world of drug discovery, as well as then a bit of a career talk thrown in. So I will be coming to Dundee. That's my next sort of British trip.
Well, I hope they give you some Dundee cake.
Yeah, I hope so. I'll go play golf while I'm in Scotland. No, so I mean, yeah, I do go all over the world. So I've obviously got other talks more in Boston and Switzerland, but Dundee is my next British.
Okay, and you're active on social media yourself, Fiona?
Yes, I am actually. Yes, LinkedIn and yes, X. Twitter.
You say I follow you on X, so you must be on X.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. And what's your X handle, Fiona, so people can follow you?
Oh, it is. I think just Fiona H. Marshall.
Okay. Cool. We'll put that in the notes.
But it's you could look up what it actually is. I mean, again, it's what's exciting in our industry. Quite a lot about what Novartis is doing, as you might expect.
Sure.
But we are a company that is trying to go into all of these different areas like cell therapy, gene therapy. So those are areas that I usually comment on.
Brilliant. Well, hopefully everyone watching, you'll see your X numbers going up of your followers.
Good.
Following what you're commenting on, and really again appreciate your time with us today, reliving your journey and your memories with Cambridge.
Wonderful memories, and yes, I certainly whenever I come back to the UK, I always try and head up to Cambridge if I get a chance. So,
we'll love to welcome you back.
All right. Yeah. Well, great to speak to you, Mark and Graham. Thanks very much. It's been a pleasure.